Have you heard of a diasporal integration?
What on earth is that?
Welcome to the Men of Influence series, a show where we feature influential men from the disciplines of music, art, fashion, technology, business, and much more. Hi guys, thank you so much again. I can't say thank you enough. Everybody coming here, I really appreciate it.
When it comes to stuff like art and when you're making stuff, especially if you want to implement it into fashion, do not rush it.
Focus on your craft and kind of execute it to the best of your ability.
In each episode, we sit with a guest engaging in a soul-sharing conversation about their craft. These conversations need to be heard. We need to promote the inventiveness, heritage, and creativity of Africans worldwide. So, guess who's next? So excited to introduce our first guest for season 1. Some of you may know him as Fashion Roadman. Some of you may know him as Odunayo Ojo, the fashion journalist based in London, the man behind the Fashion Archive. Odunayo has also written multiple articles for the business of fashion. Now, I don't want to spill too much, y'all. So, without further ado, this is the Men of Influence, episode 1 with Odunayo Ojo. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Men of Influence series. Today, we have the one, the only Fashion Roadman. I'm gonna let him introduce himself because I don't think I can do you justice.
Yeah, so my name's Ayo, known by my Instagram personality Fashion Roadman. Don't ask me why, but yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.
That's so funny because that was actually my next question, like why Roadman?
So what it is basically because I grew up in Lewisham.
Okay.
And where I'm from, people aren't into fashion the way I am. And then, so the name just like Roadman, in the realm like of fashion, it just like.
So kind of like an outsider.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
And now it's just quirky. Every time I say that name, people are like, wait, what? Like, what? Fashion Roadman? Like, why?
That's funny. But I like the it's very different.
Yeah.
I like the uniqueness of it. Yeah. And how long have you been in the industry for?
Oh, about 5 years.
5 years.
So
awesome.
since I was 18, yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. And I actually saw that you went from chemical engineering to fashion.
Yeah.
What was that transition like and why, actually?
So obviously, being Nigerian, as you probably know,
100%.
you can't study fashion. There was no way my parents were going to let me study fashion. So I had to go the long route. So I did chemical engineering.
That's crazy.
At the University of Leeds. And then when I finished that, I was like free to do what I wanted to do. Damn. So then now I study fashion journalism.
Wow.
And I like work as a journalist. So yeah, that's kind of, I never wanted to be an engineer.
Damn, like, I was gonna ask like why, like I know there's like the more traditional route that you could go towards, but like chemical engineering I think is like a stretch.
Yeah.
Like why
I never wanted to do it. That was for my parents. That was for.
So you just handed them the certificate, like here.
And then after that, I could do what I wanted to do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So at what point did you feel like formal education was necessary for you? Because a lot of people like would work in the fashion industry and they'd be like, oh, like they don't necessarily need to go to school. So I guess the follow-up question then would be, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the importance of formal education in fashion?
I think if you have the right channels, you don't need to go to school.
Okay.
But the problem is like a lot of people don't actually understand what the right channels mean. Like everyone just thinks, oh, I can do it myself, but not really. And for me, I felt like my learning would be accelerated really quickly if I studied like fashion journalism.
Okay.
I could probably get the same information outside of school, but I think it'll just be faster if I went to school.
Okay, interesting.
So that's why,
Interesting. And do you feel like, or do you agree that like going to fashion school too would also like open up doors for you that like you wouldn't have been able to have access to without going to school?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like even the school I go to, the CSM alumni is huge. Like just because you go to a school, you meet someone who's graduated, they're like, oh, you went to CSM, and then you're like best friends suddenly, and that has led to like a lot of opportunities for me.
That's awesome.
So I've realised that just going to study fashion, just by virtue of it, has opened a lot of doors, definitely.
Yeah, right. For people that don't know, CSM is Central St. Martin's. It's like the top school in London. So like, was it hard to get into?
Not for me because I'm older. So I have like 5 years of experience and stuff compared to like 18-year-olds who are just like applying. So I think because I know they accept you on the basis of grades and then also experience. So I had like a lot of experience that other people wouldn't have. So
Fashion experience, right? Oh, okay.
So I think that made it a lot easier, definitely.
Okay, nice. And I guess as a Black fashion journalist, do you think it's been easy for you to, I guess, like make a statement for yourself and just like transition, like just find your way through the industry?
Yeah, I think there aren't many Black fashion journalists.
Yeah, 100%.
There aren't many of us. So even just by me being Black, people are like, what, a Black fashion journalist? And people are like really interested just because of that.
Really?
So I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but things do happen because of that.
Wow. So you'd say like, I guess you don't really have a lot of peers in London that are
I personally do not know any other Black fashion journalists. No way.
That's sad. That's sad, and that's interesting, I'd say.
Yeah, I'm aware of some, so I know some that like write for Vogue but I've never met them. So all like my friends in the industry that are journalists, they're definitely not Black. Yeah.
Wow, interesting. I'm trying to think of like in America, like if there are a lot of, I guess there are more, but like you only hear of like the Elaine Welteroth, and then
one of the most
everywhere.
famous ones, her name is Robin Gavin.
Okay.
She's Black. She writes for the Washington Post, but then again, she's in America, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting. Okay. And I guess like with publications, what has been your favorite one to work with so far and why?
Well, I'll say BOF because I work there now, and
nice.
it's fun, but I've written for like a few different publications like Vogue, Sleek magazine. Okay. But I still say BOF is the best. The team is nice. There's no like, because most places when you go there's like a hierarchy. So it's like you're the young guy who's gonna come here and shut up and do what we tell you to do. But at BOF they actually, even as a younger journalist, they give you like freedom to write about what you want to write about.
Nice, that's cool. So I guess like working for publications of like such caliber, what do you think you'd say that they look for people that want to hopefully work for people like that later on?
I'm not sure about now, because I think now that things have gone digital, they're looking for more people that have shown like a track record of being able to do stuff digital.
Right.
But at least when I was applying, it was just someone with a unique point of view.
Nice.
And me being younger, I also can market that whole Gen Z thing.
Yeah.
So a trick I use when I want to like get articles approved is I'll be like, this is what young people are saying. This is and they won't argue because of my age.
Yeah, because exactly,
so
like you're validating it and they can't really. Okay, that's nice. So that's a good trick. Okay, awesome. And what's your favorite article that you've written? Do you have one?
I'll probably say it's about Thebe Magugu.
The South African designer.
He's a South African designer, and because of the research I needed to do for it, so I read 4 books, interviewed him, interviewed South African journalists, and like, because I didn't know anything about South Africa or South African culture going in. Nice. So I felt like to write the article, I needed to like understand apartheid and all the different things that would happen.
Yeah.
And why it was my favorite was just because of how much I learned writing the article. Now I feel like I know so much about South African like culture and stuff.
Right. It's very interesting because like I guess my first introduction to like South Africa in general was like a history class I had in college, and I had to like research about like the apartheid and everything. I was like, oh my god, like it's crazy how like in Africa we have such different experiences, and you'll never really know until you actually like do the work. Like if you're intentional enough to like research on it. Yeah. It's insane. It's crazy. But can you tell us what like a typical day is like for a fashion journalist?
Wow. So in the morning, I probably have pictures. So that's where I so I have editors. Like there's the people who are like higher and they approve my articles. So I have to go to them and pitch an idea. Like, okay, I have this idea to write. This is the reason why. Like every publication has a point of view. So ID, for example, would be like young, underground scene, that sort of stuff. Business of fashion, there has to be like a business angle when you write about anything.
Okay, nice.
So you can't just pitch anything. Like they're going to ask, okay, what's the business angle? Why is this important in a business setting?
How does it like work for their image as well, right? Okay.
So after they're pitching, they'll probably steer you a certain direction. And then once it's approved, then I start writing.
Okay.
So a typical day, I have pictures in the morning, then I'm probably reaching out to people to interview.
Okay, nice.
Or looking for research material. It might be a book, it might be an article, it might be data. And then that's in the day, and then after that, I'm just like transcribing. That's the longest thing that I do, and I hate it. It's
really?
terrible.
Wow, that's interesting. And when you talk about research, like I feel like a lot of times research in general can be very overwhelming. So like, where do you even start from? You know, it's like, okay, yeah, I want to do this, but it's like, where do you like, you know, I guess what sources do you go to look for to be like, okay, hey, like this is where I'm gonna find what I need, all of that type of stuff.
Yeah. So what I normally do actually is I find experts on the topic, and then when I interview them, I actually ask them what they recommend. In terms of like, okay, what books do you recommend? Where should I go to learn more? And most times that works because if it's a topic and they're an expert, they're going to know more than I would ever know. So they're going to lead me in the right direction.
Okay, nice.
So most times I rely on my experts.
That's cool. That's very intentional. I didn't even think about that because I mean, obviously you want to go to someone that knows more. Oh, okay. Okay. And then since we touched a little bit on like African designers, what do you think the fashion industry needs to do in terms of like just making sure that more minority designers, Black, African, get like, I guess, the recognition that they deserve?
Yeah, I think journalists just need to learn about fashion in a wider perspective.
Yeah.
Like my issue, and actually why I wanted to be a fashion journalist is like when it comes to fashion, all the publications talk about the same designers. And the same brand. So like Fashion Week, everyone's going to review Dior, Gucci, Balenciaga, Louis.
Exactly.
And like there's so many other brands, even within Europe, not to talk of like Japan or China or Nigeria, Ghana. So I like people to have a world view on fashion. And I think that's starting to happen. Like more people are starting to look at around the world. I know South African Fashion Week is becoming big.
It's becoming a big thing.
Arise Fashion Week in Nigeria is becoming big. So I think over time it started to build up.
Exactly. And I guess to touch on that, I loved the article that you wrote about on BOF, the recent one, about like how African designers are tapping into their roots and getting success and all that stuff. I feel like that's been happening in terms of like them like tapping into their roots, but it's interesting to see what particular designers are getting that international recognition. Right. So what do you think they're doing differently? I want to get your perspective.
So I talked to one of my friends about this, and he's like a well-known fashion designer.
Okay.
And he said that he feels like Western publications only cover African designers that they feel are palatable to the West. So you can be an African designer, but if they don't deem that you're going to work for the European audience, they won't cover you.
Wow.
So I think now we're just starting to, maybe now it's more acceptable for African fashion to be a thing in the West, and now that's why we're seeing more African designers get coverage.
And when you say more acceptable, you mean from an aesthetic point of view, right?
So like the silhouettes, the prints, like stuff that they're maybe not used to, but it's similar to stuff they've seen before.
I guess that makes sense because a lot of African designers are like their stuff are very like androgynous. I think it takes a certain type of person to wear a lot of their stuff. So maybe I guess that's why. But I think I don't know. I'm just thinking. I'm thinking of like the Kenneth Eze. I'm thinking of like the Thebe. I hope I'm saying his name right. Yeah. And stuff like that. And I guess they have some type of like Western zhuzh to it.
They do. Like Thebe, for example, makes suits. At the end of the day. It might have a South African edge to it. The prints might be South African, but it's still familiar. Like people in the West can wear a suit, they can wear a dress. So it's not like crazy, it's not far removed.
Yeah, interesting. And I guess another thing I wanted to ask your opinion about is slow fashion, slow production, all of that stuff. But I guess like relating it back to African designers, because I feel like when I talk to designers that are based in Africa, one of the biggest things is like how it's kind of hard or even impossible to do mass production. Yeah. So I just feel like if I would say they or we, since I'm African, if we don't ever like get to the point where we are able to cross this barrier of mass production, will we ever really be internationally recognized? Right. You know what I mean? Because it's like we don't really have the resources to do that. It's very, very hard, but like to be in fashion, you have to appeal to the masses.
Yeah.
But I guess that's kind of changing because like fast fashion is now being looked at as like a bad thing, kind of, but not really. So I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I think in terms of slow fashion, I think Africans should definitely promote it more.
Right.
Because by nature of just, we don't have the infrastructure, everything is made mostly handmade and things like that. And in the realm of like sustainability, slow fashion, we should be marketing that more in Africa.
Exactly.
Because I feel like that's a big talking point and it's like a missed opportunity. But in terms of scaling production, the problem is fashion isn't seen as like a serious thing. In Africa, it's not seen as like, what, you want to be a tailor? It's like,
Every time you say fashion designer, they're like, oh, you're a tailor. And I'm just like, damn, can you put some respect on it?
Yeah, so that's why, but I think slowly we've started to build. Like, I know there are stores, like I wrote in my article, there's places like Ajoa, there's places like the Folklore that are stockists of African brands. And that's one problem we had. We didn't have like places to stock as an African brand.
Exactly. And I find I'm really like excited that those type of, I guess, companies are coming out because, you know, you can go to like a Bloomingdale's, like an Neiman Marcus, like a Selfridges, that you know what type of designers that you're finding, but there wasn't really like a hub for Africans, like, okay, like this particular department store or like this particular like e-commerce retailer like stocks just African designers. And I think that's nice. I think that's interesting. But then with that as well, I see like, I don't know, because, you know, back to slow fashion and all that stuff, like when you're producing less, it's going to cost you more. So at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, we're in Africa and we're doing slow production and like, you know, putting in time and quality and all of that stuff, but the majority of Africans can't afford these clothing, these clothing. So like,
the problem is like everything happens in stages. So like the European fashion industry is so old. They've had so much time to build, whereas ours is a bit new. Like even Lagos Fashion Week, South African Fashion Week, these aren't like old fashion weeks. So
been there that long.
It takes time. Like first our fashion weeks have started getting big. The next thing is like stockists. Now we have like stores opening up. And after that we're going to build infrastructure and I think it's going to grow from there. I think the African fashion industry is still kind of, and when I say fashion industry, I mean in like a global sense. Not like making clothes, we've been making clothes forever, but in a global sense it's quite new. So I think it's going to take a lot of time to build. But I think more people are starting to understand there's money in fashion. Literally the richest man in the world 2 weeks ago was Bernard Arnault, and he's the guy that owns LVMH. So he's built his wealth from like Louis Vuitton and not Gucci, but Louis Vuitton and Dior.
Awesome. And then let's talk about the Fashion Archive. So why did you start the magazine? What's all of that good stuff? Can you spill the tea?
So it's, the reason I started my magazine was same frustration that when people write about fashion, it's always about like Dior and Gucci and Balenciaga, and it's tiring because I'm going to see it regardless.
Very repetitive too.
So I wanted to make a magazine that focuses on fashion like around the world that I'm interested in. So like in my magazine I had a Romanian designer, Nigerian designers. I had creators from like all over the world. So that was my kind of point of making it. It's like having a world view on fashion.
Interesting. And in that light, because I feel like you would shed light on like smaller designers. So like what are like some new designers that, you know, are really doing the thing right now you feel like we should be on the lookout for?
I mean, everyone in the magazine. So
right.
So we've got there was Lego Space Program. He was in it. I think. Do you know Lego Space?
I actually was reading your article last night, and then I went and because I actually had never heard about Lego Space Program.
It's a brand in Nigeria. They're kind of becoming big. Slowly but surely. Then there's Alexandra Shipa, who just graduated 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
But I think she's going to be big soon. That's the Romanian designer.
Romanian, okay. I was going to ask you where she's from.
I'm trying to think of who else. So there's Deviate. Deviate is a brand from Detroit. What I really like about Deviate is that they help young designers. They help empower young designers. So normally, if you work in a brand, let's say Gucci, Balenciaga, whatever, you start from like the bottom where you have very minuscule responsibilities, but what they've done is they've brought like students in and they have like big responsibilities, so they're going to learn faster. So they're almost like grooming the next generation of like designers. So I do like what Deviate is doing. So there's a lot of brands
out there. I feel like the fashion industry is so large and so saturated, but even in its saturation, there's still like people creating new markets in the market with like some crazy ass innovation. And I'm just like, okay, come through. Interesting. So I guess like, I know you spoke about like your inspiration or like your research and like, you know, going through experts and stuff. Is that the same ideology you use when you're finding these new designers? Because like, how the hell would you know someone from Romania and like Detroit and like you're based in London? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So actually, what happens is, apart from just I see things eventually, like because of my audience, sometimes people just message me like, oh, do you know this brand? Have you heard of this brand? And sometimes it'll be like really unknown brands, but I like what they make. And then like a year later, they just become big. And then since then, when people like ask me, oh, have you seen this brand? I'll take it more seriously because I don't know where the brand could be and stuff. And if I really like it, then I'll cover it, even if they're like unknown. So I think my audience actually does help me with that.
Okay,
like,
nice.
Keeping like, you know, up to date with who the new designers are.
Yeah, interesting. And to qualify a brand as like, you know, a good brand or like whatever, like other than the aesthetic, what do you look at as a good quality of a brand?
Definitely the message.
The message.
Like the inspiration behind collections. Also the quality.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, that it has a good message, the inspiration, but if I buy a jacket for £200 and it rips, what's the point? So I think quality is probably the most important. Then definitely message, inspiration. That's why I like Thebe Magugu, because his work is really rich and like deeply rooted in his culture, like everything he does. So I really like that.
Awesome. And I feel like it's kind of recent in a way that messaging has been such a huge thing in fashion, because I think like the older designers, it was more so about just the aesthetic and the glamour and all of that. I feel like it's kind of more recent that people are talking about the message and trying to like figure out like, oh, what do you stand for and yada yada yada. So like, what do you think was the main reason for that shift?
Personally, I think fashion has become more popular.
Okay.
And when I say fashion, I don't mean like wearing clothes. I think having a deeper interest in fashion. Like when I was younger and I was into fashion, well, okay, I didn't have, normally the thing is like, if you're into fashion when you're younger, people will think you're gay. But why I got away with it was because like I played basketball and I played football, so I just managed to get away with it. But now it's actually cool to be into fashion.
Yeah, it's like...
So it's actually weird. So that's why I feel like just fashion in general, it's now cool to be in fashion, especially for guys. So I think with that comes a deeper interest, and with that comes people wanting to know, actually, what's the inspiration behind this design? Whereas before, people maybe just thought of it on an aesthetic level.
Yeah, interesting. And I feel like the world too is becoming very like sensitive in a way, and then like everyone is paying more attention to like your intention. So it's always like, oh, like why are you doing this? Like everyone's like, oh, your why is so important and all of that stuff. So I think maybe that could also be a reason why like messaging is such a huge thing now, right? I guess. Okay, another question. What would you say is your favorite, or like any documentary or book that you've had the most insight from?
Is it fashion documentary?
Fashion, yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Probably the McQueen documentary. There's a lot of, it's either that or the Diana Vreeland documentary. It's called The I Must Travel, I think.
I haven't even seen that one.
Yeah. So I can tell you who Diana Vreeland is. She's like quite a iconic fashion editor in Harper's Bazaar, and like a long time ago, like 50s, 60s.
Wow,
and then she went on to Vogue and became like a really famous fashion editor.
Nice.
And she was like editor-in-chief of Vogue when she went there, and made Vogue iconic and made Harper's Bazaar iconic. But anyway, that was like getting to know her story was really good. And then McQueen is just, he's like, to me, the greatest designer of all time.
Yeah, I love McQueen.
He's like everything. He's the one designer who had like every single aspect. So McQueen knew how to sew.
Yes.
Because he worked at Savile Row. He knew how to make patterns because he went to Milan and he was making patterns. He was a creative mind, went to CSM, had the formal training. He literally has like everything. I don't know any other designer that has
all
every
of the
single
skill set, right? Yeah, I think that's very important. And so it goes back to like formal training. I feel like a lot of people kind of downplay, because I think because of how popular fashion is now, it almost makes it seem like it's easy to get into. Yeah. And then a lot of people are like, oh yeah, you know, I can just finesse my way through it, and then they don't really care about the skill set. And I'm like, child.
Do you know what I think it is?
Yourself.
I think Virgil Abloh caused it. And I like Virgil Abloh, by the way, but I think the issue is like with Virgil Abloh, he actually put in a lot of work that people don't see.
Yep.
So like people think Virgil Abloh just woke up one day and then made a graphic brand and then made Off-White and then became successful. But like Virgil Abloh interned at Fendi.
Exactly.
He worked for Kanye West at Donda for years and years and years.
Right.
He studied architecture, and when he was studying architecture, he used to make graphics. So before Off-White came about, this was like 10 to 15 years of work in the making. But people just see like the brand at the end and they're like, yeah, I'm gonna make some Instagram brand, and then they wonder why.
T-shirts and I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that, and I'm just like, yo, that's
it
not
doesn't
the
work
way.
like that.
That's not the way. And I think it also goes back to like, I guess when Virgil kind of popped up really like mainstream, I think that was a time where like our generation was getting very like obsessed with instant gratifications. Everybody wants it to happen now. There's no patience anymore, and then everyone just wants like a fast result. And I guess also at that time too with like Instagram too, because you only really see the finished product.
Right.
Nobody really sees like the grind and all of the behind the scenes stuff. So I guess that kind of plays a part in the way people
I don't know any fashion designer that was big overnight. Every big designer now, if you think of Telfar, Telfar has had the brand for years.
Like people just think the bag came from nowhere, and like there's no such thing as an overnight success, right?
Yeah.
But people think so, but hey, we're here to tell you guys there's no such thing as overnight success. Okay. With the way you've studied fashion brands, what would you say has been like the most reoccurring struggle that most brands have, like starting out or like at any stage of their brand? Really, what do you think is a huge challenge that you see a lot of times?
It's most definitely the money part, like funding.
Yeah, and I've had a feeling you're gonna say that. Let's talk about that. Yeah.
And for two reasons. It's funding to actually like do productions and stuff, but it's also having a business mind.
Yeah.
Because the problem with like, especially like when you go to like a school like mine, is students get taught to make amazing clothing. They're not taught how to run a business.
Boom.
So then what happens is you have designers who can make amazing clothing, but they have no clue about how to run a business. So they don't like get the right price for fabrics, they don't do their production properly, and then they make a loss, and then their brand closes down.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest issue is one, commercial training for designers, and then two, actually getting that funding. So I know in the UK there's like initiatives, like there's Fashion East.
Okay.
There's the BFC, which has loads of different awards, there's different funds, but if you don't get one of those, you're kind of on your own.
Yeah, it's like, damn, you gotta go out like from your pocket and stuff, and how long is that really gonna last you for being realistic?
Like, where's a student gonna get money like
exactly right out of school,
£50,000 to produce their first collection? Like,
exactly.
Damn near impossible.
Right, and that's interesting because I went to fashion school in America, and when I came to London like 3 years ago, I had an internship here, and that was the first time I really like fraternized with students from schools in Europe. And I just felt like it was really interesting because in America, I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's because of the culture there, but you kind of get more commercial training.
Oh, definitely.
Versus here, like here they just teach you how to be creative and this and that, and that's cool, definitely. But like, I just always feel like creativity is not enough, and it's like we weren't even able to speak the same language like a lot of times, because I guess I'd be thinking more like, I don't want to say like realistically, but like you have to kind of be realistic. I feel like there has to be a good balance of both, you know? And it's just interesting to see, I guess, like even depending on where you go to school, it has like a lot to do with your mindset afterwards.
I agree. That's actually, so my friends talk about that. Like if you go to school in America, there's more of a commercial sense, whereas in Europe, especially like France and London, they're more thinking of like being an artist.
Right.
But there should be a balance. So I think that's the issue. It's just like people are always like, oh, you have to be an artist first, you have to make creative clothing.
All right, y'all. This brings us to the end of this amazing interview. Man, I had to cut it short here because I would literally go on and on and on. Y'all see how I was rambling literally throughout this interview. It was just such an amazing experience, you know, and it's crazy because I had just met Ayo that day, the day that we filmed on set. That was our first time meeting, but the connection was awesome. I wouldn't even say it's because we're in the same industry, but I would really say it's because we have similar values, and I just really respect his thought process and everything that he's done for himself, you know, so far. As a fellow Nigerian, you know, gotta big up my people, you feel me? But yeah, this was so great. I hope you guys enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed filming. And yeah, we'll see you in the next video. Stick around and join the 919 gang, okay? This is the Men of Influence series. Thank you guys for tuning in.